It's 1982, and tonight we're having a slumber party. And I've got some provisions for the party tonight.
What are provisions?
You know, Doritos, No-Dos, Bennies, crystal meth. Anyway, this is Open Mic Night of the Living Dead, and this week we're talking about the Slumber Party Massacre.
The creature's creeping right behind you. I hope you finally find a little slice of peace and light. 'Cause it comes crashing down tonight. Welcome to the open mic. When we call your name, you'll die. But there's no need to dread. This is the open mic night of the living dead.
All right.
Okay.
Slumber Party Massacre, a little bit different than the last couple of weeks. A little different than Sinners and Candyman and those types of films.
A little lighter, a little more obscure.
Though probably a little more to this movie than maybe initially meets the eye.
I would say so.
And I do think if you're talking about early 80s slashers, which was the height of slasherdom, probably, you know, this is almost a quintessential slasher in a lot of ways. I think it might be what a lot of people expect on the surface from a slasher movie, the teen slasher.
I think that's fair.
But as we'll get to, it's more satire than your straightforward slasher film.
Yeah, that's fair. Hey, who are you?
I don't give that information anymore. Last time I gave away my social security number, and listen, my phone has been ringing off the hook. People want to give me tax advice. They want me to take out personal loans. I don't do it.
Every day I get at least 7 of those calls myself, and I didn't even give out my social security number in the last episode.
But I guess if it's just the first name, I am Thomas.
I'm Rachel.
I'm just kidding. I'm John.
I'm still Rachel.
And what was your first time watching this movie?
My first time watching this movie was with you. It was not your first time, but it was mine. And it was great.
Was it here that we watched it?
It was here that we watched it because we dressed up like this movie before I had seen it.
That's right. And by here, I mean our house. Previously, we lived in an apartment.
Yes. So we definitely watched it here in this house, but I dressed up like one of the victims, generic 80s slasher victim, and you walked around with a drill for a Halloween party.
Not nearly a big enough drill, but it was the first thing I could get my hands on.
Yes.
And I don't think it was long before we watched it that I had watched it. It's not like I saw this back in the day.
No, you had started your horror journey a couple months before we kind of started together and started tracking everything. And I think that was maybe 2022. And you had started watching movies late at night, and this is one that you had told me about. And so we ended up dressing up like it. And then shortly after that, I think we watched it for the first time. I wonder if I have it in my... Anyway, yeah, I remember enjoying it. And then we watched it a second time. And then this was our third time watching it for the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. And before we go any further, this is our spoiler alert. This is a deep dive episode. So we will be, hitting on most of the major plot points and those sorts of things. So if you haven't seen the Slumber Party Massacre yet and you don't want it to be spoiled, pause this real quick, go watch it. It's a quick 77-minute movie. So, depending on your phone's screen settings, your phone might not even shut off before the movie's done. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Mine's set to like 7 seconds. I don't know how to change it, and it's infuriating when I'm like writing a song on it.
Oh, and then it, automatically goes down. Yes, I hear you.
Because that's the other thing we do here at the Open Mic Night of the Living Dead. We also, later in the episode, towards the end, will be presenting new songs that we have written inspired by this film. And I've not heard Rachel's. She's not heard mine. Even though we're married and live in the same house, we keep it secret. We record on opposite sides of the house. Or right, I should say, on the other side of the house. We don't record on opposite sides of the house.
No.
I don't have cables long enough for that. So, that being said, do you have a summary of this film?
I do have a summary. This one I combined from a few places. It's a little longer than usual, but let's see what you think of it. A group of high school girls gather for a slumber party while the parents are away, expecting a night of gossip, music, and teenage rebellion. But an escaped murderer, armed with a power drill, is roaming the neighborhood. The night unfolds, and the girls realize they're trapped in the house with a killer.
That's fairly good.
Yeah, it's pretty good, right?
I wouldn't say they're trapped in the house with a killer.
Yeah, that one.
At one point they are.
A couple of them are. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's girls having a slumber party and there's a killer, which is pretty obvious from the very get-go, which we'll talk about. The very get-go? Not sure if that's accurate, but you know what?
Can you quantify get-go? We've been talking about quantification of terms in the past couple episodes.
That's true. That's true. No, from the get-go, we are aware that there is a killer and he uses a drill. So, yeah, that's it's basically what happens, but it's not what happens, but how we get there that makes this movie so special and so much fun.
And this movie is The Slumber Party Massacre. As we have noted, it was released on November 12th, 1982, with a runtime of 77 minutes. That is 1 hour and 17 minutes. It is a quick one. It is right in Roger Corman's wheelhouse. The budget was approximately $220,000 and it made $3.6 million at the box office, which is actually very successful. In terms of today's dollars, it would be a budget of about $710,000, making $11.6 million at the box office. This movie was released by New World Pictures, which is Roger Corman's studio. And reception, as often is with these types of film, mixed, to say the least. Many critics treated it as standard exploitation slasher fare and didn't recognize the satirical aspects of Rita Mae Brown's screenplay. But like with many of our films, over time it has undergone significant reassessment in horror scholarship and also feminist film criticism. Today, it's often described as both a proto-feminist slasher and a satire of male-dominated slasher conventions.
Yeah, that all sounds about right.
I do have some quotes from back in the day. First, on the negative side, Janet Maslin at the New York Times said, "The Slumber Party Massacre is just the usual cavalcade of corpses, all of them dispatched by a maniac who wields a power drill. At the end of the movie, a woman who has miraculously survived the carnage breaks his drill in half. That's feminism for you, and symbolism too." Time Out magazine said, despite the unlikely script credit for Rita Mae Brown, Jones's debut feature is little more than a Halloween clone. And Variety said it was competently made but derivative of more successful teen terror entries.
That's what satire is. It is derivative. It's not negative about satire.
Yes.
I'm over here shaking my head in disgust. You can't see it, but that's what's happening.
But there was some positive quotes.
Let's hear it.
Before you shake your head off,
nod my head in agreement.
The Los Angeles Times said that it was better made and more clever than its exploitative title suggests. Director Amy Holden Jones stages the action with unusual pacing and clarity. Film Comment called it a sly, subversive take on slasher conventions, hiding inside what initially appears to be a routine drive-in horror movie. I also have some retrospective quotes, so more recent, looking back.
Nice.
And I think that's what this quote is from the Austin Chronicle. What looks like a cheap exploitation picture gradually reveals itself as something stranger, a satire of male slasher fantasies directed with real craft. The AV Club says what initially looks like another disposable entry in the early 80s slasher boom reveals itself to be slyly self-aware. IGN says The Slumber Party Massacre is far smarter than its title suggests. Bloody Disgusting says Jones directs with an energy that elevates the material beyond simple exploitation. And lastly, Paste Magazine says more than 4 decades later, the Slumber Party Massacre remains one of the most fascinating oddities of the slasher boom.
I like all those. Nodding my head enthusiastically over here.
Now, the movie didn't really receive any awards or get any major nominations, so we won't be...
Or any nominations.
Yeah, that's why it didn't pop up in our encore episode last week. Ted, our dog, just trotted in.
Come here, buddy. Up. Idiot.
Of course, again, the movie's been widely reassessed and is frequently cited in feminist horror scholarship and cult horror retrospectives. Sometimes I wish I was like in my 20s or 30s in the early 80s, because the state of the horror genre was something special then, especially for us slasher fans.
It was, but it was also a lot lonelier, I think. I think back then, because there was no internet, there was no community like there is now. Now you can kind of feel connected to people all over the world and talk about these things. And back then, there was just either your friends watched them with you, or maybe you would watch Monster Vision with Joe Bob and feel like you were watching it with some friends, right?
Not that early.
Well, not in the 80s, right? I know, 90s, but still.
Yeah, I wonder if, because, I sometimes care too much about what other people think of me, which at this point, what does it matter? I got a podcast. I'm telling you all my social security number. But I wonder if I'm sure I would like the movies when I had a chance to see them in the 80s. This is imagining me being an adult at that time.
Right.
But I wonder if I would keep it hidden, or if I wouldn't go to them thinking that it was bad.
I don't know. That's a tough question. I think I've always been drawn to horror movies, and that is a whole nother podcast episode in and of itself about like how we were drawn to this genre. But I think you're right. I think that back in those days, horror movies were maybe something that you would keep hidden depending on your family and your social circles, right? That there's a lot more judgment back then about being into movies like this, I think.
And when this movie came out in 1982, it was really during the peak of the slasher boom, following the success of course, other movies we've covered, Halloween in 1978 and Friday the 13th in 1980 and subsequent sequels and all of that. Common elements in this movie include teenage victims, masked killers, sexualized violence, and the final girl trope. And the Slumber Party Massacre participates in these conventions while also subtly satirizing them. And if I was hitting the theaters back in the day, some other horror movies I might have caught were The Thing, Poltergeist, Creepshow, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, whoop whoop, Basket Case, The Slayer, and The Beast Within, among many others.
I think if there was a way, I think it might be an interesting idea. You can put a pin in this for later if you want, but one interesting idea for an encore might be, what year do you wish that you were around to see movies in the theater? Because I think 1982 might be a top contender for me. Between The Thing and this movie, Poltergeist, a bunch of the things you just named. Oh, man. But I don't know. 1985 would also be a pretty killer year. And not just for horror, but I'm thinking some of the other big ones that came out that year, like Back to the Future. Yeah, that could be fun. We should think about that.
Make it a competition.
We could rank the years. We could do a ranking.
Interesting.
Top 10 years we wish we were alive to watch horror movies. Put a pin in that. Look at us. Ideas on the spot. This movie didn't get great ratings.
Nope.
IMDb, it's a 5.6.
Too low.
Rotten Tomatoes, 39% critics and 45% audience. Look, I don't want to be one of those guys who's like, they just don't understand. But seriously, they just don't understand. They don't get it. That's why we do this. This is why we do the important work of explaining. Just a lot of, I think they just saw it and didn't see deeper. But that's pretty typical, I guess, for our favorite genre. Letterboxd, 3.0. That's more kind of in the range, I think. My personal rating, I have recorded this 3 times, and of those 3 times, Twice I gave it 4 stars, and once I gave it 4.5 stars. So I think I'm going to stick with a 4 out of 5 stars for me, which means it's one of my favorite movies. And I think that it's in the top tier for me for sure. What about you? What's your personal rating on this?
I didn't write it down here, but I'm nearly sure I gave it a 6.5.
Yeah.
Close to a 7 in that range, which, gets a big boost because I like it so much.
Yeah. And then for our podcast rating, which our podcast rating is pretty simple. It's 1, 2, or 3. 1 is trash. 2 is almost everything. And 3 is you should watch this if you are a fan of the genre or want to learn more about the genre. I'm going to say this is a solid 2, maybe 2+.
Yeah.
I think it's important if you like slashers, you should know this one, but it's not The Thing or The Exorcist or
no.
Yeah, it's not seminal, which is funny because we're talking about a feminist movie. But I think it's a 2, a solid middle upper range 2. Yeah,
and I don't know. I'm not sure if the movie would be better if it hit you harder over the head with the satire. I don't know if some of what makes this movie so fun and good would be lost if they did that. But I wonder if it would rank higher or if it would be rated higher by some of these ratings institutions if it did.
I guess if you didn't understand that it was satire at all, because I do think it's a mix of satire and exploitation. And I think that a lot of the ratings are given looking at it solely as an exploitation movie. And I think for me, what elevates this beyond and kind of makes it one of my favorite deep cuts is the fact that it is satirical and exploitative at the same time, which is really cool. And I think maybe people just weren't looking at it with those eyes or just don't read texts that deeply, perhaps.
Well, and I think that's the tricky thing with satire as well, is that for something to be categorized as satire, I think you have to make the thing that you're satirizing, right?
Yeah,
it has to be encapsulated. You couldn't make a drama movie that's a bad example, but you can't just make a movie that's a spoof or a parody. That's a different type of film.
We're talking kind of the difference between Scream and Scary Movie, right?
Right.
Scream is satirical, but it's also a really good horror movie that's scary and makes you afraid, whereas Scary Movie is all satire, all spoof, all funny. It's really leaning really hard into that side of things. And I think The Slumber Party Massacre is closer to Scream with the way that it is what it is satirizing at the same time. Yeah?
Exactly.
Cool. Well, should we make a movie?
Let's make a movie.
Let's make a movie. We'll make sure that it's spooky. I sure hope that it's groovy. Let's make a movie.
Okay.
All right. So, first, let me run down through some of the key personnel who worked on this film, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on a couple of the, hard-hitting players here. But it was directed by Amy Holden Jones, written by Rita Mae Brown. It was produced by Annette Benson and Carol Baum, with Roger Corman is uncredited, but he was an executive producer on this through his New World Pictures company. Cinematography was done by Stephen Alposi and music by Ralph Jones. First, I think it's important to talk about Rita Mae Brown, the screenwriter for this film. She was born in 1944. She's a novelist, activist, and screenwriter associated with second wave feminism and LGBTQ plus literature. I'm sort of looking at Rachel because I don't know about the different waves of feminism, and I'm sure you might be getting into some more of that later in the themes.
A little bit, yeah, not too much. I should know since I went to a school famous for putting out feminists, but it was Second wave, I went to school in the early 2000s, which I think we were at fourth wave feminism by then. But second wave feminism was like the 60s to the 80s, I think.
And her novel Ruby Fruit Jungle, which was published in 1973, became a landmark work in lesbian literature. And I think if I was understanding the brief description I was reading about that earlier, it was sort of an autobiographical fiction. I haven't read it, but Brown was active in feminist activism and worked with organizations such as Now and the Lavender Menace. She wrote the Slumber Party Massacre screenplay as a satirical response to slasher conventions, exaggerating elements such as the killer's oversized drill weapon and voyeuristic tropes. And I think also in terms of her activism, she had a lot of focus too on the marginalization of lesbians in the feminist movement, which I thought was interesting. Sort of a movement within a movement.
Yeah, which I think is pretty typical in a lot of movements for inclusion and equality, that they kind of begin in one way kind of raising those that are already raised up, and then within that there are other groups that then continue to ask for more inclusion and more notice. So that makes sense.
Did you have anything else on Brown?
I don't. I kind of let you contribute to that. I have not read any of her books, but I know she's also a poet is the only other thing. So,
and she did work on a couple of other screenplays, but really is most known for her literature. And I think she has like a mystery series now that has like a ton of books in it. Miss Murphy's, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's about like a detective who like solves crime, or animals solve crimes.
Mrs. Murphy book series. Oh yeah. Yes. And Sneaky Pie Brown. So I'm not a big mystery reader, but I know people who are, and I did not put together that Rita Mae Brown and Sneaky Pie Brown is the one who I'm just putting that together right now. I have seen those books on my like grandmother's shelves.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
And her background is very interesting. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to look more into that and check out her literature. I'm not a scholar of any type of literature, let alone feminist and LGBTQ plus literature. So I'm not the expert here. And if I'm missing anything that's, really relevant to what we're talking about, please leave it in the notes. But otherwise, check her out. She's well acclaimed in the space.
Yeah, that is so funny. I have seen those books so many times, and I just now realized, because the only thing that I ran into as I was looking at things was about this movie in particular, and not about the rest of her career. So thank you. That's pretty great.
That's
Who else made
here
this
for.
movie?
Well, the director was Amy Holden Jones. She was born in 1953 and broke onto the festival circuit when she won first place at the American Film Institute National Student Festival for her documentary A Weekend Home, which she released in 1975. This little director named Martin Scorsese was a judge at that festival.
Sounds familiar.
And so he was fond of her work on her documentary. And basically after this festival, she kind of was struggling in Boston, was having a hard time finding ways to make ends meet. There was not a huge market for documentaries. So she reached out to Scorsese and basically said, should she move to New York? Would there be better opportunities for her there? And then a few days later, he called her back and offered her a position as an assistant. Some places I saw like assistant director, but I think she was an assistant editor during the production of Taxi Driver.
Oh.
And he basically told her, you're too good just to be an assistant, and connected her with Roger Corman. She did some other editing on Hollywood Boulevard, Corvette Summer and Secondhand Hearts, but it was Corman who gave her the opportunity to direct the Slumber Party Massacre. She only directed 3 other, full-length feature films, including Love Letters, Made to Order, and The Rich Man's Wife. She later became known more as a screenwriter. She was a screenwriter on Mystic Pizza, Indecent Proposal, and The Relic. But she also has done, I think she also was a screenwriter. She co-wrote Beethoven with John Hughes.
What?
And she was a writer on like all of the sequels, even the sequels that were past my time.
Wow, that was definitely a formative movie of my childhood.
Yeah.
So we should have included her in our encore episode about family directors who started out in horror.
I believe you did the research for that episode, so.
Damn it.
And she's also done plenty of TV, including, I believe she was the creator, along with a writer, on the TV show The Resident. I also wanted to take a moment where I'm assuming we'll eventually get to some more Corman films in the future. For those of you who are not aware of who Roger Corman is or was, he was a low-budget film producer. Is that the fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think so. I love that Scorsese connected her with Corman. That's just such a cool thing.
And I mean, he was also a director of many films in many genres. We were lucky enough at one of the jamborees we went to. Was it the first one?
It was the first one that we went to, yeah.
In 2023?
2023.
Roger Corman at Joe Bob's Jamboree was presented with like a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they did a big interview with Roger Corman and his wife Jean. And we got to see a couple of different Corman flicks that night. But Roger Corman created New World Pictures in 1970, and he became famous for producing low-budget genre films, and he launched the career of many major filmmakers, including James Cameron, Joe Dante, Ron Howard, and Jonathan Demme. And the company specialized in horror, science fiction, and exploitation cinema. And I think one of these days when we have a movie that he's directed or produced more closely, we'll give a little bit more on Roger Corman, because he's so important to the genre and really an interesting sort of player in the movie industry for so many decades.
Yeah, I would love to do a little more on him and his influence on the horror landscape, the exploitation landscape, which are sometimes the same thing, but not always.
And that's all I have for now on some of the crew. Why don't you tell me about the cast in this film?
Sure. I know the last few movies we've done have had casts that there was a lot about them, and also filmmakers, right? And I think what's neat about going back and doing one of these little tiny independent films is there's not quite as much. There's a lot of people in the movie, starting with Michelle Michaels, who plays Trish, kind of our leading girl. We can talk about who the final girl is. There's final girls in this movie. But Michelle Michaels did not make a lot of movies. She was a punker in a car in New Year's Evil from 1980,
Nice.
Which is one that we really like. She had a few TV roles in the early 80s. She was on Chips and The Incredible Hulk, but The Slumber Party Massacre is her most recognizable film role. We've got Robin Still, who played Valerie. She appeared in a few genre cult films in the 80s, nothing that we're familiar with, and later worked outside the industry after leaving acting in the 90s. So there's quite a few people in this movie who never really did much else afterwards. Michael Villela, who plays Russ Thorne, the driller killer. He's a character actor, had a few other TV shows and films. Again, nothing that I was super familiar with. This was one of his most well-known films, and he passed away just recently, just about a year and a half ago. So in his 80s, though. So he had a nice long run. We've got Deborah DeLiso, played Kim. She had a lot of TV and film roles, but also very active in theater. She has guided the writing of and directed over 600 one-person shows at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, USC, where she's a teacher. So she has been incredibly active, even though she does not have a huge filmography. She has remained, and I thought she did a great job in this movie too. But Kim is the blonde. Yep. It is hard when you have these ensemble casts sometimes to keep them all together. And I know that's one thing that we have our own ways of doing in our notes. Like, wait, who's that person? Who are they again? Andre Honor plays Jackie, again, in a handful of film and TV roles in the 80s, but hasn't done much since then. And then Gina Mari played Diane. She had some TV credits. She was on Knight Rider in the early 80s. Yep. Jennifer Myers plays Courtney. This is her only credit on IMDb. And she did such a great job. I couldn't find anything else about her. There was nothing. Jennifer Myers, unfortunately, is a very common name, so I couldn't even find like where she ended up or what she was doing. But Courtney, the only role. And then the one person who I think probably has had the biggest career after is Brink Stevens, who plays Linda. We got to meet Brink, or I'm not sure if we met her. I think we got to see her at Jamboree 2024 when she was there. Brink plays Linda, who is, I think, our second person you'll talk about in Murder Mayhem coming up. But she became one of the most recognizable scream queens of the 80s. She was in dozens of horror and sci-fi films, some of our favorite kinds, including Slumber Party Massacre 2, Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bowl-orama, which I know we've seen, and many, many others. So Brink Stevens.
She was in the sequel to this?
I think so. Did I write that down wrong? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I don't know how she would be in it unless...
I think she was maybe a different character.
Huh?
Yeah. The second one of this is very different from the first. Extremely different.
Yeah, there's two sequels.
Does that mean we get to put the sequel on the sequel?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I would love to do the sequel to this. I know we haven't done Halloween 2. We haven't done any sequels yet, but let's start with this one. And then Pamela Roylance played Coach Jana. And she had a lot of TV and film roles, including Murder, She Wrote.
Of course.
MacGyver, Days of Our... She was a regular on Days of Our Lives and also on Little House on the Prairie.
Nice.
So I think this might be our least famous cast of all the movies that we've covered.
So far.
I think, I think Brink Stevens is the most famous person. And unless you are into horror and exploitation films, you probably don't know who she is.
That is something that I truly love. And maybe it's one of the reasons I love some of these old slashers so much is even though, and I actually think the acting was pretty good in this, you know,
I do too.
Given the credits and everything that you've listed, but that doesn't always matter to me. I like it when it's a bunch of people that I don't know who they are. It's something that, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved One Battle After Another that had a bunch of, you know, had Leo and Sean Penn and all of that. But for these slasher films, I like it when I don't know anybody in it. They just seem like they exist in this world and they're part of this specific universe for this, you know, 77 minutes to an hour and a half. And then I never see them again. And I think that just helps with the immersion, or I don't know why I like it, but
I think you might be right. I also really like thinking about people like Brink Stevens and some of the other scream queens that we have gotten to know over the years, who we see in movies and are white. Can't remember. We met her.
Linnea Quigley?
Yes, thank you. Why could I'm like looking at her face in my brain and I could not say her name. But when we see one of these, like the kind of lives that they have lived to be in hundreds of movies, right? Like they've been in hundreds of movies. The stories that they've told, I mean, like Felissa, right? Like her career and all the movies that she's been in. It is this cool little community of actors who have been working like crazy. And they may not have the fame and the following of someone who's in one of these massive blockbusters, but I think their lives as artists are probably incredibly fulfilling because they're constantly working, constantly creating, meeting other creatives, having fun. And I would say from the ones that we've met, and the ones, I think Felissa Rose is probably the only one we've ever actually spent time chatting with a lot because she's so generous with her time, as anyone who's met her at a con can attest to. But just the vibe and and the personality it takes to be in this community is just, it's really cool. It's really neat. But yeah, that's all I've got for cast.
Should I tell you a little bit about the filming?
I would love to hear a little bit about the filming, especially with that budget, man. Like, what a small, is this the smallest budget film we've covered? It might be close.
We'd have to go back and look at what, like, Halloween and...
I feel like Halloween was like
Friday the
700 or 800. Yeah, I think they were under $1 million, but still more than 240.
The principal photography took place in 1981 in Los Angeles.
Good year, good year.
The suburban neighborhood scenes were filmed in West Los Angeles residential areas. I couldn't nail it down more specifically than that yet, but when we were watching it, I was like, this looks like where Back to the Future was shot. Or Halloween, for that matter, except one notable thing was that the very first thing that they show you is a palm tree. Like, we're not pretending to be anywhere else. We are in Los Angeles. And then I think one of the next scenes they show you a newspaper heading about Russ Thorne, the murderer, escaping from jail. And it's like the Los Angeles Times or something like that. So we're very hard in Los Angeles, and no doubt about it, we're not trying to pretend we're anywhere else. The primary slumber party scenes were filmed inside a real house, which was used as the central set. Consistent with Roger Corman's production model, the film was shot very quickly in approximately 20 to 22 days. And Amy Holden Jones filmed the first 3 scenes of the script as proof of concept to secure funding from Corman, is what I read in one place. I hope that's accurate. She turned down editing work, E.T., in order to direct this film.
Wow.
And actor Michael Villela.
I said Villela because that's the Americanized version, but Vieja is probably the correct.
From what I saw, he reportedly isolated himself from the cast to make the actresses uncomfortable during filming. And he studied Helter Skelter, sort of Charlie Manson, while preparing for the role. He also supposedly modeled some of Russ Thorne's physical movements on predatory birds.
Huh, which is like Psycho.
Anthony Perkins, yeah.
Yeah, that tracks.
So, and I bet it was a lot. I always think that these movies look like they were a lot of fun to shoot. I could be completely wrong. I'm not an actor or somebody who's worked in films yet, but it seems like these would be so much fun. Back in the day, the weather was so good. There was no cell phones. You just show up on set, do your scenes, and go walk around Los Angeles, slurping on a Slurpee. Or I don't know.
That's what they do there.
I don't know what happens in Los Angeles. I've never been.
I've only been once.
What was the Slurpee count?
It was Slurpees as far as the eye could see.
Didn't you go to a 7-Eleven when you were in Los Angeles?
I don't remember. Did I tell you I went to a 7-Eleven while I was in LA?
I almost have a weird memory of it, but I might have just made it up right now.
I'm not sure if my sister would have taken me to a 7-Eleven.
I think it was when you were on one of your own adventures or something.
That makes sense. I've definitely been to 7-Eleven, just don't know if I've been to one in LA.
They might not even have them out there. You tell me, listeners, if you're out in Los Angeles, tell me how many 7-Elevens you got. But that's pretty much all I have on filming on this. I think I'd like to watch that behind the scenes featurette on the Blu-ray, but we haven't had time to do that since we watched it. But
we haven't. We have lots of things to do. So yeah, no, that sounds great. By the way, Halloween budget was $325,000. So this was a lot closer to the Halloween budget than it was The Thing, which was $15 million.
What about Friday the 13th?
Ooh, good call. Friday the 13th was $700,000. I was going to guess 800, so I was close. But yeah, this is still less than all of those, but makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, should we head into our vibes check?
Let's do it.
We're checking the vibe. Sounding good and looking real nice. How'd they make that guy alive? It's better off without CGI. Guessing on point and we're feeling fine. The slow burn is taking its time.
All right. It's vibe check time. Let's talk a little bit about what? What?
What is going on?
Let's talk a little bit about the aspects of the filmmaking that made this feel so good to us.
Yeah.
And,
Good vibes.
And it's funny because there's nothing like super notable, at least on my end of things. The cinematography was, competent and fits the purpose. It was shot by Stephen L. Posey, and he used a straightforward early 80s slasher visual style, including suburban night lighting, practical interior lighting, and like tight hallway framing in the house. Again, we're talking about a quick shoot on Roger Corman's low budget, so it's not like they were trying to go for any sort of cinematography masterpiece here. But like I said, it really suits the film. I feel like it's fairly immersive and realistic and naturalistic. The killer often appears suddenly within the frame rather than through extended stalking sequences. So we're not watching like Michael Myers.
No, but I did notice there were frequent POV shots from the victim's perspective, not from the killer's perspective, which fits in with this being a satire or satirical perspective on. There's a lot of ways that this film flips the normal expectations while also kind of echoing a lot of the usual. So like this is 1982, so we've had Halloween, we've had Friday the 13th, right? We've had Terror Train, we've had New Year's Evil, we've had, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones we've watched, but Nightmare, Prom Night, that's right. We have not had Nightmare on Elm Street yet. So I wrote that one down while we were watching it, that there was a lot of POV shots, but not from the killer, which I think is on purpose and is part of how this movie flips your usual stalker slasher tropes.
Well, and the other thing that it really flips in comparison to those movies that you just mentioned, this is not a cinematography thing, but like we mentioned before, you know from the opening scene who the killer is.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that a little bit more later, because I think that's a really big piece of what this movie does. And it does it not just with the narrative and the choice of who to show on screen, but the way that we see, which is cinematography. So the way that the shots are composed.
But overall, like I like this era, like I've said, but it's just really cozy. That neighborhood during the daylight shots and during the nighttime shots, aside from the fact there's some creep with a gigantic drill running around.
Big old drill.
I could see myself enjoying a life in that neighborhood.
I really liked Val and Courtney's house.
Yes.
It was really cool. But it did echo, in my notes I wrote, when Val goes outside to check on the trash cans, it reminded me a lot of Halloween when Annie goes outside, right?
Yep.
So visually and in terms of cinematography, it does feel like Halloween. And if you're just looking at the surface level, you want to be a stupid critic who's like, they're just being derivative. Like, no, they're paying homage. Homage? Homage?
Homage.
Anyway, the only other note I had on cinematography was the match cuts. There's a lot of really cool match cuts which use sound, especially the drill noise. There's a lot of transitions between the scenes that were really, really cool and funny and kind of jarring. So that was another cool, that's more editing than I mean, that is cinematography, right?
It's part of it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And production design, too. Like I said, it was shot in a house. But I do miss the days of all the colors. And I've seen videos recently on the social medias about why that is. And I won't get into it. But just the major transition from sort of the colorful past of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, of course, into sort of what we have now, this sort of monochrome homogeneity. Hi, I'm John, and this is my friend Homogeneity. So, what do you got on special effects?
Well, they're all practical effects. Duh, I wrote. Especially with that budget. We're not a lot of computer effects or any. There were a few scenes that were challenging to shoot, including the shower scene where there's a saw blade piercing skin, or the blade is piercing the skin. The killer's weapon is a corded power drill. This is obviously like a really different visual identity compared to the knives. There's lots of like eyes missing and holes in people. So blood effects were created using tubing rigs, which we've seen. I was just thinking of that Tom Savini, one of those Tom Savini videos on YouTube where he shows the tube underneath, like he's showing Letterman how some of that is done. And then the door drilling scenes use breakaway props so that the drill could puncture the wall safely. So they weren't just pushing through like a straight door, like there were breakaways there. So things that made it look real. I didn't notice the effects very much as we were watching, which I think is a testament to how good they were. I think practical effects, I think it's one of the reasons we love practical effects so much. I didn't think at any point, it was not the 70s bright red paint blood like you see in Lady Snowblood or one of those other 70s movies that we really enjoy. It looked realistic in the way that 80s early slasher gore looked, and was done with camera blocking and practical effects. So
I didn't consider the fact that he would have to plug that in everywhere he goes.
Right? And it's funny because they even call that out where she's got the table saw and she's plugged into the wall and she runs and then snaps back, right?
That's great.
Val in the basement. But yeah, he would have had to plug in that drill everywhere.
Which might not have always been possible. Let's say he had a early battery powered. I mean, it was already not a real drill. It was like made for this movie, right?
I think so. Yeah, I've never seen a drill that big in real life. I was not familiar with the special effects crew. It's Larry Carr and Rick Lazzarini. I looked at it and then I didn't write it down. I'm so sorry. I have failed you all. I just kind of was looking directly at the effects themselves. And so
I did see that somewhere though, that the drill was made specifically for this film because it's supposed to be kind of oversized. So with that, I'm going to imagine that it was also battery powered.
Yeah, it must have been. I feel like that's fair. Larry Carr did do Friday the 13th Final Chapter and A New Beginning. He did special effects for that. And also Friday the 13th Part 3. He did makeup for that. He also was art department for Fright Night Part 2, which we haven't seen but is on our list. And Pumpkinhead, he did the creature effects.
Oh, cool.
So he is,
he would have done some work with Savini because I think Savini was the lead effects on, did you say the Final Chapter?
I did, yeah. Friday the 13th.
Yeah, that's when Savini came back, I think.
Oh, so maybe, I mean, that would have been after this movie, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I think the effects in this certainly remind me of like Friday the 13th, which was Tom Savini and that style. So I think Larry Carr was part of that. That's part of what gives it that real 80s visceral kind of gross vibe, the hyper realistic stuff, even just compared to movies a decade before that were kind of more, the blood was it was not realistic. It was very bright and would have been scary, but not the way like the kills in Friday the 13th, for example.
I almost feel like they got away with a little bit more gore in this than they did in some of those earlier Friday the 13th movies. Maybe because it was low budget and maybe more targeted to like a drive-in audience, that it wasn't as big of a budget. Like,
they probably didn't have as much. I mean, you had Roger Corman on deck as executive producer, right? You're not dealing with like the big studios. You're not dealing with needing to worry about ratings so much because this movie was not going to be. It wasn't going to be another Friday the 13th or another. It wasn't trying to be. Right. I mean, it certainly made a ton of money for the studio based on the budget, had a really big return. But yeah, the special effects in this movie, fantastic. Totally in place and realistic and did not take you out of the movie, but instead brought you into it. So I really liked it. Definitely part of that 80s vibe that we adore. Talk to me about music and sound design.
Again, we've got the low budget Roger Corman. Music and score was composed by Ralph Jones. He created mostly a synthesizer-based score influenced by major horror scores. You can sort of hear a little bit of Jaws and a little bit of Halloween in there sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I mean, there are some themes, musical themes in there, but it's not super theme heavy. We're not talking about, you know, Carpenter's score for Halloween where there's Laurie's theme and stuff like that. Jones's music includes rhythmic pulses, electric piano textures, and eerie high-pitched tones, sometimes resembling electronic insects almost, which I noticed on a few occasions, kind of like random sort of like crickety sort of
Critical cricket.
critical cricket going whip. The score alternates between upbeat party-style melodies and unsettling atmospheric motifs. There were a few songs on the soundtrack by sort of more major artists. I believe there was like a Motorhead song on there, maybe a track by the Zanies, but there was also several like pop songs, 80s style pop songs that were, I think, written by Jones or others specifically for this film, for their use, you know, for the party scenes and other moments. So, but I really dig these kind of old-timey 80s scores. I'll say it over and over again. There's something about the Teen Wolf score that I really like. Just some of those really cheesy 80s numbers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One thing I noticed about the sound design was the transitions. Like, just like there were a lot of visual match cuts, there was a lot of audio match cuts, and there's a lot of diegetic radio music in the beginning, which kind of like set us in that suburban feel, right? Where she turns the music on at the very opening. I liked the sound design. I thought it fit, again, with the vibe and really placed us in this very specific moment, early 80s slasher suburbia.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of these Corman movies, not all of them, but even though they were operating on a small budget in a short period of time, there were a lot of people really trying to prove their muster. I mean, I think that's another thing that makes some of these, you know, low budget exploitation films so great is people really cared.
It was passion. And these were passion projects for people who love movies, making movies, having fun. It wasn't this big studio production with all these different cooks in the kitchen. It was somebody wanting to put something together and everybody kind of being on board for that.
Well, that being said, I do think the studio got in the way a little bit in terms of at least how they marketed this film, but I think you'll be getting into some of that in a bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a tension, I think, there. But yeah, but I think that's it for Vibe Check.
Yeah.
Yeah? Shall we move on to story time?
You know what? Let's.
Okay.
This is story time. It's where we tell you about the story. It's the time.
Here's the time.
Should you lead us off with characters?
I will. I'll start out with some characters. So we've got Trish, our girl Trish. We open up with her putting away her dolls while she gets dressed.
Yeah, there was a big... I guess you're going to talk about that in themes.
Yeah, for sure. The transition from childhood to adulthood. I mean, it's like just hitting you in the face here in that first movie, like where she's in the first scene of the movie. Trish is one of our final girls that we see at the very opening. Very clearly a young woman, but they don't even like hang out in her room. I don't know why she decided that was the day to throw away all of her childhood dolls, but Trish is the one who hosts the slumber party. Trish is excited because her parents are going away and leaving her alone, and she's going to have this party with all her girlfriends. She's wanting to be an adult, and she's, says specifically to her mom, like, "Mom, I'm 18," which of course we as middle-aged parents are like, "You are a child." And yet, 18 is an adult. And so we really like Trish. She's nice. athletic. There's a few things about her that never got fully fleshed out. Like, who drove her home on a motorcycle?
Oh, right.
Nothing. Like, there's
She kissed that guy, too.
Yeah, but he doesn't even play a role. Like,
mustachioed motorcycle man. Maybe that was her real boyfriend dropping her off at the shoot. Yeah, they captured it in some B-roll.
I think that that's part of what's great is that for some of our characters, they are in relationship with someone else, right? Like Diane has her boyfriend, but like that these women are full characters on their own and everyone else is kind of peripheral. Anyway, so that's Trish. We've got Valerie, the new girl who lives next door to Trish. She is not invited. Well, she's invited to the party, but she doesn't go because she has to babysit her sister. But she also heard the other girls talking shit about her. Valerie is very pragmatic. She's pretty smart. She takes good care of her little sister. And in the end, she is also one of our final girls. She kind of works as a foil to the girls who are at the slumber party, the going back and forth between the two groups of girls as the night goes on. So Valerie is kind of not the opposite of Trish, but she's the counterpart, right? The leader at the other house. So like Valerie a lot. She's pretty great. And she's a great big sister, which I love as a big sister and as the mother of children who likes to see siblings getting along. We've got Russ Thorne, who, again, we talked about. He's introduced early as a murderer who previously killed 5 people in 1969. So he's been in the mental institution since then and has escaped. He's shown almost immediately. So there's no mystery about who this guy is. We see his face, we see his weapon, we see him killing. He does have a bit of, his only lines are almost at the very end of the movie. And we'll talk about that when we get there. We don't know his motivation except he's just kind of crazy. But he has it reminded me of Black Christmas, 1974, where we just get 1 or 2 scenes where we get exposition about Billy and why he's doing what he's doing. And it's the same, actually very similar. I'm just thinking about that right now, in that the killer is not the point. The point is the women. And I think that this movie, like Black Christmas, is about the women and their relationships more than it is about the killer, as opposed to something like Halloween or Friday the 13th, where it really is about the killer and the killing. And this, by showing us the killer, we are decentering the killer. So.
And that is really the thing about this movie, too, is that it really is women-centric.
100%. Whole way through.
Any of the male characters are really peripheral.
Oh, it's so cool. The flipping of the script is so neat. And actually so much that I forgot to talk about the actors who play the 2 boys. Because for some reason I didn't write that down. We've got Kim. She brings the beer and the weed to the party. She's, again, a good friend and helps. She does not survive. She's not one of our final girls, but she almost makes it. She is compassionate. She's funny. She's caring, which of course ends up getting her killed at one point. But we've got Diane. Diane's pretty fun. She's the outspoken personality. She's got some really great scenes when she finds her boyfriend, which you'll talk about in Murder Mayhem. There's a famous scene when she's on the floor between the killer's legs. That's Diane, kind of that iconic scene with his drill between his legs and she's on the floor. Also, she's got some pretty good lines when she is talking shit about Val. And then Trish says, "You're a snob." And she says, "Only the best people are." So Diane is like, she knows who she is. She knows what she's into. We've got Jackie is another one of our slumber party goers. She also expresses a lot of compassion, and that ends up getting her killed because she opens the door to try and tell Val to be careful, right? And then gets gutted by the drill. But Jackie's also super fun. One of the girls, when Kim, and Trish are all listening to the phone call, just a great scene. Really solid, positive perspective on female friendship. We've got Coach Rachel. She's the basketball coach who becomes involved in the confrontation with the killer later in the film.
Coach Rachel Jana.
Coach Rachel Jana, yeah, sorry. Her first name Rachel, last name Jana.
Double first name.
Yeah, she's coded pretty lesbian, I think, especially in the scene where she comes home and Pam, the handy woman, is putting in her peephole, which is such a cool scene. You think, but we know there's a driller killer, but it's actually just this handy woman who's putting a drill in. But Coach Rachel definitely, I think there's probably a stereotype about high school coaches being lesbians, and I think that she plays into that. But again, knowing this is a Rita Mae Brown script, not a big surprise.
All the women in this movie were really interested in baseball too.
Yeah, they were all super into sports, right? Which is just really cool, which is very different than what you would usually find in a movie. Like, a lot of people think that slashers, the women are all one-dimensional and don't have anything beyond being kind of fodder. But these girls are very well developed, and it's about the relationships between them. Again, I'm just being struck by all the similarities between this and Black Christmas. I do want to talk. There's also the two boys. So there's Neil, which I'm not sure we ever find out his name in the movie. But there's Neil, and then what's the other one? Jeff? Yes, Neil and Jeff. And Neil and Jeff are cheering the girls on at their basketball game.
I would also say it as Jeff and Neil.
Oh, Jeff and Neil. Jeff
has the bigger part.
Yes, he does. And I skipped them in the casting just because I had been so focused on the women. But Jeff was played by David Milburn, and Neil was played by Joseph Allen Johnson. And both of them, well, I did not write anything down about the cast, but for characters, these guys they're great characters, even though they're like trying to watch the girls change and being all skeevy, which is very typical for movies of this time. But again, they're peripheral characters. They're not the main characters. I remember watching when the girls are playing basketball and the boys are cheering. That seemed like a subversion to me. And Neil and Jeff but they are peripheral characters, but they also do try to protect the women, even though they do not succeed extremely well.
Yeah.
They tried their best, but they get killed pretty quick. But they do, once the pizza guy gets pushed through the door, Neil and Jeff say, okay, we're going to try and save him. We're going to split up because one of us will make it. They're wrong because, again, not very smart. But really, really good guys in the end. And maybe they would have gotten laid if they hadn't been killed.
Maybe.
Who knows? But that's not what the movie was about, and that's what's cool. So, and then there's also John Miner, who's Diane's boyfriend, the other boyfriend, who does not make it very far and is the only one with a last name.
For some reason.
For some reason. And they all call him by his first and last name. So, yeah, the boys in this movie, not the main characters, which is definitely a subversion of our typical slasher movie. So yeah, that's it for our characters. Quite a long list. Tell us how they died, John.
My pleasure.
Amazing.
Let's talk a little murder mayhem here. We've got plenty of it. It looks like I'm seeing 12 kills approximately. Starts off bright and early with the telephone repair woman. Again, even the quote unquote handymen of this movie were all women, right?
Yeah.
We have the telephone repair woman killed in her van with a power drill, kind of reminiscent of Randy. Well, no spoilers for other movies. Sorry. I was going to talk a little 90s movies for a second, but yeah, she's quickly dispatched after a quick awkward conversation between her and the boys.
Yeah, Jeff said, what does Jeff say? He says, you've heard what they say about younger men, right? Give it a try. You'll like it. Or something. like
she's like,
he's
okay.
got game. And she doesn't even speak, I don't think. I think she barely says any words, but pretty great.
She tries to get out of the situation from the van, but somehow they don't hear her screaming from the van, and she's killed by Russ Thorne, pretty much like everybody else. Our second kill, again, like you had mentioned earlier, what's her name? Well, the character's name is Linda.
Oh, Brink Stevens.
Brink Stevens, thank you. Quite a great little sort of cat and mouse sequence. She returns to the school for some books that she left behind. Just leave those books, kids. Just forget. You don't need that knowledge. And, she thinks she's found a pretty good hiding spot after, getting nicked by the killer at one point, right?
Oh, that's such a great scene where she's hiding and she's betrayed by her own blood, right? Like her blood is what shows the killer where she is. And I love that scene.
And her kill is actually off screen, so we don't actually see her get killed, but it's obvious that it happens once her blood drips under the door and is spotted by Russ Thorne. Then it's a little bit of time before we have another kill here. We get some development of the characters, sort of the setup of the party, and also the house next door with Valerie and Courtney, the non-party goers. And also it's through here that we were introduced to Mr. Contant.
Right.
The neighbor who's like kind of creepy, right? In a way.
He reads as creepy and
or just overly kind.
Overly interested in these teenage girls, although he's also seems a little gay, so I'm not sure.
But he is out hunting snails, which apparently is a problem. If this happened somewhere where you grew up, please leave it in the comments. I want to know more about this snail epidemic that needed such attention, because apparently not only is Mr. Contant concerned about the snails, but so was Trish's
Diane's dad.
Diane's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's out there killing snails when he's approached by Russ Thorne and drilled through the back of the neck, because, you got to get rid of that overly concerned neighbor who might stand in the way of killing all these teenage girls. And then it's a little bit more time when John Miner comes to visit Diane at the sleepover. Is there a difference between a sleepover and a slumber party? I'd like to think that there's some sort of delineation, but there probably isn't.
I don't think so.
I'll come up with something. John Miner pulls his car into the garage. He and Diane are in there doing a little bit of necking, right? And heavy petting. And they decide they're going to go off back to his house, right? His parents are gone.
Yeah, his parents are gone. And she is trying to balance, like, her girlfriend's wanting her to hang out and wanting to go bang her boyfriend. And so, but she gives in.
She does. So she runs inside to let Trish know. And when she returns, she discovers that poor John Miner's head is no longer connected to his body.
Such a great scene.
So his head rolls off, and then Diane is also killed shortly thereafter in the garage. Meanwhile, Jeff and Neil have joined the girls, right, at the slumber party, and have been hanging out for a bit, and they're all expecting a pizza to come. There's a knock at the door. It's the pizza guy, supposedly. When they open the door, they discover that not only is the pizza delivery boy not alive any longer, but he doesn't have any eyeballs. So apparently he was drilled through the eyes, right? That's what I'm getting from that.
Oh, that's what I got. Yeah, drilled one then the other.
So no more pizza boy, but the pizza's there, so that's good at least.
Oh yeah, that'll come up.
At one point, Jeff is going out. Is this after the power went out, maybe? I don't know. But Jeff is out in the garage. That's when he discovers Diane, who flops down from the ceiling, kind of like one of the dead teenagers in Halloween.
Oh, yep.
She kind of like falls down from the hanging position above. He gets drilled in the garage, and we think that that's his death, but it's not really. And then, just so I don't confuse myself on sequencing, I will say that he is later killed. We see him crawling out of the garage towards the house. He is finally drilled and killed on the doorstep trying to get back into the house.
That's such an interesting scene because Trish doesn't want to let him in because she's afraid it'll be dangerous. And she's not wrong, because later on in the upcoming deaths, trying to save other people gets people killed. So Trish's lack of compassion, which is generally a feminine characteristic, right? But her sense of self-preservation is part of what helps her survive for the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Neil is also sort of stabbed during this time period out in the yard, in Valerie's yard, because they're trying to find Courtney. There's a whole confusion of where Courtney's gone, and Valerie's looking for her, and she goes next door. Have you seen my sister? All of that. So Neil kind of comes back to Valerie's house with her, or at least looking for her, and he is stabbed by Russ Thorne right in the yard.
Yeah, right there. And isn't that when Valerie's watching the movie?
Yes. Yeah, why did he come over?
I think he was coming over to try and get them to call the police.
Yeah, something like that.
And so he's like banging on the door. And the movie that she's watching, by the way, is another Corman movie. It's a New World movie called Hollywood Boulevard, low budget comedy known for its satirical take on the B-movie industry. It was created as a bet to make it the cheapest film for New World Pictures, directed by Joe Dante.
And directed by Joe Dante and edited by Amy Holden Jones, the director of this movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So and it was $60,000 budget. So I feel like that is a movie we should probably watch.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we need to watch that movie. But yeah, I wanted to look that movie up because it seemed relevant. So yeah, Hollywood Boulevard is what Val is watching. And it's so loud that she doesn't hear Neil screaming and being killed.
Well, she kind of hears it.
Yes.
So she eventually goes to the door, but by the time she gets there, he's dead and gone.
They're like behind the bushes, right? So you can see the shadows, but she just thinks it's the shadows because the wind has been making a ruckus and the trash cans have been getting knocked down by dogs. And so she just misses it. So yeah, that's crazy.
Our next kill is poor Jackie. At this point, the girls have sort of they know that there's danger afoot, obviously.
Can we talk real quick about the mayhem of Jackie eating the pizza?
Was that before or after?
I mean, before she's killed.
Yeah, good point.
She says, oh gosh, where is it? I have it written down too.
Yeah, because the pizza guy's body is inside and the pizza's sort of on top of it. And I think one of them says, he's so cold. And Jackie goes, is the pizza?
Yeah. And she says, life goes on after all, and eating makes me feel better when I feel bad. And boy, do I feel bad. And then she eats the pizza.
I know plenty of people like that, I feel like. So yeah, later on, they think it's Valerie at the door.
Yes.
So Jackie goes to let her in or to let her know that she's not safe. But when Jackie opens the door, it's not Valerie, it's Russ Thorne. And she gets her comeuppance.
She does. And then it's just Kim and Trish left in the house.
In that house, yeah.
And Valerie and Courtney at the other house.
So at this point, Kim and Valerie have barricaded themselves in... No, sorry. Kim and Trish have barricaded themselves in Trish's bedroom.
Yes.
And to me, that is the most common trope in horror movies. We should do that's another thing we could do a encore on, is sort of the tropes of horror movies, maybe specifically evading death tropes.
Yep.
Is pushing the chest of drawers in front of the door.
Yes.
Or pushing any type of furniture in front of the door. So they've barricaded themselves. And this is there's a great shot where we're looking at the girls, but you can kind of see a window sort of in the background, maybe like 10 feet behind them, right? And you see the window open. And Russ Thorne lets himself in. Poor Kim gets stabbed either in the lower chest or upper gut, somewhere in thereabouts.
Somewhere in there.
And so that's how she meets her end. Meanwhile, they have notified Coach Jana about the problem. I think one of them Kim had been talking to her on the phone.
They were on the phone about the baseball game.
About the baseball game, because that's what you had to do before the internet.
Yep.
You had to call somebody who had information. You're like, who would know the best about the hitting statistics from last night's baseball game? Oh yes, Coach Jana. And so Jana has been alerted to the mayhem afoot at the Trish household, and she eventually shows up. She lets herself in. She sees what she thinks is a dead body on the floor, but it's actually Russ Thorne, that he's disguised himself and is lying on the floor. When she takes the jacket off, he attacks her and drills her. But we're not sure. Do you think that she's dead?
I wondered that because I thought from our previous viewings that she survived, but then she does get drilled in the gut, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I was almost expecting her to show up by the pool, which we'll talk about in a minute at the end.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
She didn't, so...
But she does a good job fighting him.
Yeah.
She's great. She's a great protector.
So fatality unclear on that one.
Right. Well, Courtney's hiding underneath
the couch.
Underneath the couch. And Valerie's in the basement trying to pick a weapon.
Yes. And all of that leads to the final battle. out by the poolside. Valerie has picked her weapon. She's picked a machete. And
Good choice.
she runs out, and it's kind of Thorne versus Valerie, right? At first, at least. And she first cuts the tip off his drill. Very symbolic, I'm sure.
Very.
And she also severs his hand and kind of cuts him in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And he falls in the pool, and we think maybe he's done. He's done for. That's the end of Russ Thorne. He's filling that pool up with blood, but like any good slasher worth its cuts into the blood, he's not really dead. And
nope.
He pulls himself out of the pool for another face-off against Courtney, Valerie, and Trish shows up with a knife, but he doesn't survive the onslaught from the women. He makes a very good effort, but eventually he jumps at Valerie, who, properly aims her machete at him, and he lands on it, dying for good.
And there it is. We've got 3 final girls, maybe a final coach.
3 final girls and maybe a final coach.
Yeah, not so sure. But yeah, plenty of murder and mayhem in this, man. Really, really well done.
A lot of good stuff. One thing we haven't really talked about at all is this movie is really quite funny, too.
It really is.
The comedy stands up.
Yep. Agreed. This is such a fun movie, man.
And there's a good deal of nudity as well.
Lots of boobies.
All of the stuff that makes for a well-defined exploitation film.
Yes, but let's talk about that as we discuss the themes. One of the first themes we've already talked a little bit about is adolescence and leaving childhood and the transition. The film opens very blatantly, as we said, with Trish putting away her dolls while preparing for her day. It's not subtle, but that's okay. It's basically the movie telling us exactly what's happening and who she is, that she's kind of on this threshold between girlhood and womanhood, saying to her parents, I'm an adult, I'm 18, but she's really not. They still need help, right? They still are not safe. Old enough to kind of perform adulthood, but not old enough to be safe in it yet, which is, as the parents of teenager, frightening because they think they know what they're doing, and yet there's still so much danger out there, which is what these movies explore. We've talked a lot about that with movies like Halloween and Friday the 13th, and that this is a really common theme for slashers, especially in this time period, to explore. So there's a whole kind of crossing over vibe of these kids moving into adulthood.
And Courtney's really kind of the representation, right, of sort of the younger pre-transition in a sense.
Yeah, she very much wants to be like her big sister. She runs upstairs and sneaks a peek at her Playgirl magazine. Her sister does her hair and her makeup, and she's so interested in what's going on at the sleepover across the street, right? She just wants to go be with the girls, and she's like, I think there's boys over there. What's going on? And she clearly gets more than what she bargained for. But Courtney is a great character and really interesting. I'm not sure if there's a parallel to her in any of our other movies. I'd have to think about that. But Courtney's a really interesting character here because you're right, good call, that Courtney is the young girl representing that.
You get some of that in Halloween 4 with Danielle Harris's character.
Yes, but not so much, not up until this point, I think, at where we're at in 1982. I don't think we have very many examples of that because the kids that Laurie Strode is watching in Halloween are kids. They're 10 or 11 and still very much children. And that's not the case with Courtney. Courtney and her big sister, really cool representation of sisterhood on screen. Female social spaces. This is where this exploitation versus satire really comes into play. So the slumber party setting creates a shared social space where the girls are talking about sports and relationships and everyday life. They're talking about so-and-so dating this person. They're listening in to Diane's phone call with John Miner. The slumber party's not just a bunch of girls taking their tops off and having a pillow fight, although they do take their tops off, but they're really just acting like people, right? They're not girls, even though they are. It's not that they're not girls. It's not that gender is neutral. It's just that they are fully recognized characters, and they are the center, and the boys are at the periphery. And setting up these female social spaces also means that when that's violated by violence, it's not just a holding pen for victims, that it is a space that is whole and safe and positive that is then interrupted by this man and his giant drill. And so, yeah, I wrote down when we were watching, they're just chatting about sports like dudes. And I think that is really subversive for the time period when women were not necessarily seen. And especially in slasher movies, they were fodder. They were not characters in and of themselves. We've also got the visibility of the killer, which kind of links into this, which we've already talked about, so I won't spend too much. But the killer is decentered when we know who he is from the start. He's not elevated by secrecy. This is not a movie about the killer. This is a movie about the girls. I mean, sexual violence and the phallic imagery of the drill, like, it is so obvious, which I think some of our critics complained about. But it almost becomes parody even when the movie is playing like a straight slasher. It's just such a big drill. And I think the weapon is threatening because obviously it kills a bunch of people, but it's also ridiculous. And I think that the drill as a weapon is obviously such a big piece of this that turns it into satire. The fact that Rita Mae Brown, who is very well known for her role, as you said, in second wave feminism and as an artist, specifically as a lesbian artist, the fact that she wrote this movie, clearly it is a feminist parody, but the finished film is also an exploitation movie that's kind of built to sell sex and violence. And I think one place that this plays out in is the shower scene, which starts like just an exploitative shower scene, right? Where like the camera's like lingering on their curves, but then they're like just taking a shower and it becomes a moment of character development. And you kind of forget that they're naked. I mean, maybe you don't forget that they're naked, but the nakedness, instead of it just being that, you learn about these girls and about what's important to them. And at least for me, once the camera moves away and it's just a bunch of girls taking a shower after basketball practice, the male gaze is so exaggerated, it just kind of starts to look foolish, like a giant drill, right?
Well, that was the thing that I think I saw somewhere where Amy Holden Jones had said that she was trying to avoid the male gaze, but that shower scene seemed to contradict that in a way, especially the lingering part that you're talking about.
Yes.
But I also thought that maybe that was being satirical because it seems so over the top. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah. So director Amy Holden Jones, she said she had to give the studio what they want regarding the inclusion of gratuitous nudity and violence, like that they wanted the nudity and violence. And that's why it's not that it completely satirizes the male gaze, but I think it subverts the male gaze. Like talking about that shower scene where the camera is lingering on these curves and you're giving the studio exactly what they want. But then it turns into this deep development of female friendships and complicated relationships. I think that's one of the ways that the film subverts the male gaze. But it is this weird mix of exploitation and satire that I think works really well. I did see in one place that Rita Mae Brown reportedly disowned the final project, even though there's a really great article that I will put in the show notes from Not Coming to Theaters Near You, I think is the name of the website. And so it was supposed to be a parody of the slasher and gender dynamics, but it was stripped of satire. Rita Mae Brown has complained that the satire was taken away, except I think that the director still manages to make it satire, even though it also is exploitation. And I think that's what's really interesting about it. I think that's what makes it last, is that it exposes the ridiculousness of some of the slasher tropes while also exploiting them for views, right? And I think depending on where the audience is coming from, they're going to see different things. I think it works as a satire, but also as a genre piece. Yeah, the movie sometimes behaves like it knows that the rules are stupid, and like I'm thinking about the scene where the coach comes home and there's the drill coming through the door at her, right? Like the movie knows that we're expecting this death to come, and it keeps teasing us with it. And I think it does the same thing with the sexual stuff. Also, we all know from Scream that, you know, you don't have sex and don't do drugs. That's not who gets killed in this movie necessarily. Like, Trish and Courtney and Valerie are not innocent. They're looking at porn, and Trish is smoking weed, and she's drinking margaritas with her friends, right? Or whatever drink she makes. Oh no, wait. Valerie makes the Kool-Aid. Trish is making drinks. It is not that who dies and who lives is not dependent on who is sexually active and who's pure. And actually, this is what I wanted to remember. Bring Stevens, Linda, she's the one who goes back to get her books, which Laurie Strode does in Halloween, and she's the first one killed. So the studious good one is the first one, and her and the phone woman are the first two who are killed, and they haven't done anything wrong. So I thought those were also signs of some of those tropes being kind of turned around on themselves.
Absolutely.
So I think that's about it for themes. I think as a slasher, it talks, you know, about suburban vulnerability, like the home is supposed to be safe and then it's not safe. And I think that's certainly throughout. And then also, I just talked about this one, but that purity and moral superiority are not rewarded for being good. That this film doesn't do that, and that's another way that it acts as a satire. But yeah, I think that's all I've got. Who's your favorite character?
Well, especially after you told me that it might be the only film she's ever been in, I think I have to go with Courtney.
She's so cool.
And in a lot of ways, I think that she really is. A lot of times these movies have a character that sort of represents the audience, and she is the character that is that in this movie. Does that make sense? Like, she wants to know what's going on. She's kind of experiencing everything as it happens, but she's not right in the middle of it until the end, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't think of her as the stand-in for the audience. I think my favorite character is, I like them all so much, but I wrote down Valerie, and I'm not sure, but I think I do like, and it's funny, I think we're talking big sister, little sister energy here, and I like Valerie because I'm a big sister, and Courtney was super annoying and had mega little sister energy, which I found super annoying as a big sister, but Valerie still took care of her sister, and in the end went and took care of business like the way she had to. But I think Valerie and Courtney together are kind of both audience stand-ins, right? So that's interesting.
I mean, I definitely found her annoying, but yeah, she was fun.
But she's a great character. And what about favorite quote? There's a few really good lines in this movie.
Yeah, I opened with one of mine right at the top where I've got a couple though.
Yeah, I think mine, the one I finally ended up on, is when Diane's on the phone with John Miner.
That's mine.
Okay, fine. You can have it. Take it.
You always take mine.
Well, maybe we just have similar taste.
Yeah, Diane's upstairs on the phone with John Miner, and the other girls are listening downstairs, as you used to be able to do on landline phones. That happened once in Stranger Things when I was watching it with our daughter. I was explaining that was something that could happen, that you could, listen in on your parents' conversation, or your parents could listen in on you. Mm-hmm. So, the girls are kind of listening to Diane talking to her boyfriend and giggling. And Diane at one point goes, "I think our First Amendment's been violated."
So good. We both guffawed at that, I think. Yeah, that is a great line. So yeah.
Do you have any other quotes? Because there was that one where they're talking about the party early on. I've got some provisions for the party tonight. What are provisions? Doritos, No-Dos, Benny's, crystal meth. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then another part, there were several lines that I had written down, but another one that I thought was really great was when they think that the pizza's arrived, and Jeff goes to the door thinking it's the pizza guy on the other side of the door, and he goes, "What's the damage?" But it's actually Russ Thorne on the other side, and he goes, "6 so far." Yeah,
that was a really good one. And we looked at each other and we're like, 6, and we counted and figured out exactly. That was great, man. Yeah, a lot of good one-liners in this. I think another one is one I've already said, but when Jackie's talking about the pizza and how food makes her feel good and she feels real bad. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's great. That's story time, man. Heck of a story, huh?
Well, heck of a story. We highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take too long either to enjoy it. So definitely a fun watch.
This episode might be longer than the movie.
Oh, it already is.
Oh, yeah.
Great one to watch with friends if you're looking for an old-timey slasher.
Yeah.
And
I think it's time.
I think it's time for the open mic.
Nice.
Our gimmick this week was scene swap, which means place the movie or parts of the movie essentially in another time or place. And it's the first time we've had this songwriting limitation or inspiration or whatever you want to call it. But I'm interested to see where you went with this.
I can't wait to hear what you've got.
All right, let's get set up for that.
Let's do it.
Ladies and gents, we proudly present
For your listening delights,
this week's open mic.
Okay. So this is my song inspired by the Slumber Party Massacre. And like we mentioned just a few minutes ago, the gimmick was scene swap. And so what I've done is I've sort of set the movie in the modern times. I was inspired by the scene where all the ladies are sitting around reading the newspaper. A dog just chased a cat. Stereotypes. And nowadays they would be reading their phones, not the newspaper. Also, I've recently learned about a thing called a late-over. I don't even know how to spell it. It's like LATE-OVER, or maybe it's one word. For those of you who have younger kids, maybe you know about this, but it's like a sleepover, but the kids don't actually sleep over. They just stay really late, and you pick them up late, and yeah. So I think it's really more of a younger kid thing, but I'm imagining in this scenario that these high school girls who face impending doom are actually not going to spend the night. So, long story short, too late. This song is called Late Over. Let's put down our phones and let's light the night on fire. We're never alone as long as we have each other. And what you don't know, it can't hurt you except a stranger at the door. And for all we know, we'll live forever, on and on forevermore. It's a late over, no we can't stay over, of tonight let's make the most. It's a late over, no we can't stay over, by midnight all that's left will be our ghosts. Wrap up the fun, our ride's gonna be here soon, we'll never be done, but as for tonight we're through. What you don't know, it can't hurt you except a stranger at the door. And for all we know, we'll live forever, on and on forevermore. It's a late over, we can't stay over, of tonight let's make the most. It would be shocking if someone comes knocking, the only person left inside's the host.
so sorry we left you on your own to fend off any monsters that arrive. But thankfully you got a notice on your phone. You got the help you needed just in time. It's a late over, no we can't stay over. Of tonight, let's make the most. It's a late over, no we can't stay over. By midnight all that's left will be our ghosts, our ghosts.
That was great. And I also just learned that late over term. I never had known it before. I think that's really cool that you used it in this context. And yeah, your accompaniment was just sounded really, really good.
And everybody lives.
And everybody lives, which is perfect. And, well, I'll be up in a minute and I'll talk about mine. But I think it's interesting in conversation with the tune that I came up with. So yeah, great work, babe.
Thank you, love. Should we get you all set up?
Let's do it. Okay, my turn. So this song is finished, but I can't play it very well. So you're going to need to use your imagination. Also, this is a duet. So if we decide to make a demo of this, this is for both of us, which I don't think I've ever purposefully written one before.
I don't know my part.
I know you don't know it yet, so just pay attention. You'll be able to figure out. I mean, we can even like choose who does which part. I actually wrote a whole half a song that was similar to yours about teenagers being on their phones. It was called Let's Go on Snapchat, but it didn't feel quite right. And so I went in a slightly different direction. This is basically all off of our Killer's line, "You're pretty. All of you are very pretty. I love you. Takes a lot of love for a person to do this. You know you want it. You love it. Yes." And I shifted that into thinking about that phrase that, you know you want it and you like it. And so it's kind of a song for the internet age. And I think it's called You Want It, but maybe not. You'll have to, and you'll hear in the piano part at first what it's supposed to sound like, but then it's probably going to quickly get worse. And so just gotta have to use your imagination. This is the open mic, all right? All right, here we go. This is You Want It. You're so pretty, I'm so weak. I see your face and I can't speak. So instead I'll hide behind this screen tonight. It takes a lot of love, you see, to imagine you and me. If you didn't want attention, why'd you make that post? You know you want it. You know you love it. What other reason could there be to show your body off to me? And I know you want it. All of you want it. Everything that I see online was made for me and should be mine. And I know you want it. I never felt pretty, now I do. Doesn't mean this is for you. Me and my friends don't even know that you exist. It took a real long time for me to believe I deserve to be. There is a way to pay attention without dragging me. No, I don't want it. No, I don't love it. I know it's real hard to believe this isn't for you, this is for me. So no, I don't want it. I don't think anything wants this. Not everything that you see online needs you to comment or opine. And no, I don't want it. Things have changed in so many ways, but somehow they always stay the same. We should evolve, instead we try to solve the same old problems of yesterday. And you know you want it. No, I don't want it. You know you love it. No, I don't love it. Then why do you do the things you do? The world doesn't revolve around you. And I know you want it. You don't know jack shit. All of you want it. None of us want this. Why can't I ever get a date? Sweetheart, it might just be too late. I know you want it. Nobody wants it. You get the idea, right?
I mean, I think that went better than you were worried it would.
Yeah, except the piano part is not what I wanted. Like, I could play the piano part for you separately. I really want that syncopation through the whole thing, and I could not sing and syncopate it at the same time. So if we record this, I'll do the piano separately, and also you're going to do a lot of cool stuff with it. And especially that last verse is like a back and forth, which I tried to do. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could call it like trolls or troll, right? Like it's about the online harassment. Yeah, which I feel like is a proper song to be inspired by this feminist movie. I really wanted to kind of, so it turned out better than I expected when it was still a song about Snapchat. So I'm happy with this song, but I would want to work on it with you side by side. So
No, that was great. And are you saying that I'm an online harasser?
Well, I mean, it would make more sense in the context of the story, but we could also flip that around and I could be the harasser and you could be the one who feels pretty now.
Except that's never happened to me yet.
You've never been harassed before online?
I don't think so.
I mean, I've definitely been harassed in real life yes, I have been harassed online. I was going to say, no, I have not spent a lot of time online, and part of it is just how awful it is in that space. But I know many, many women in online space on different platforms do have to deal with it. And so I wanted to kind of explore. That struck me when our villain made his final character building speech in the film, and he's talking about how just his whole justification for why he's murdering these girls with a giant drill. I was like, oh, that's exactly what they all say. She deserved it. She was dressed like that. She looked too pretty to not, and that's something that women are still dealing with. And I imagine probably always will, no matter how evolved we get as a society. It does seem to be kind of a through line from, the Canterbury Tales in the 13th century all the way up till today and Instagram and Snapchat. So, yeah, so that's it. That's a pretty good open mic.
Yeah, no, I dug it.
Yeah, me too. I like both songs a lot. All right, let's get back into place and wrap this up, yeah?
Sounds good.
Great.
All right. We are losing light as we speak.
True story.
So, that was that was the Slumber Party Massacre. Should we find out what movie we're going to be watching next week?
I'm so excited. This is always one of the best parts.
So, here's what's on the wheel of horror right now, what we could end up spinning. Weapons, Carrie, The Shining, Child's Play, Smile, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Strangers, A Nightmare on Elm Street, 30 Days of Night, Sleepaway Camp, Alien, Intruder, and A Quiet Place.
All great choices.
Did I say Smile?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I shudder every time you say it.
And then, of course, we also have the sequel spot, which
Yeah.
if we spin that, we'll end up watching a sequel of one of the movies we've already covered.
So exciting.
And let me put it into spin mode. And here we go. What will the next movie be? The Shining.
Ooh, nice. All right.
Another classic.
Awesome.
And let's find out what the songwriting gimmick will be. I don't know why that spins so much more than the other one. This was a fun one before. 1 minute window.
All right.
So that means we need to each pick 1 minute from the movie
Oh, boy.
and write a song about it.
Well, I really enjoyed picking that minute last time.
Yeah, that was for Black Christmas.
It was, yeah. And I remember it very vividly. It really forces you to kind of focus in on that. So great. Hey, this has been so much fun. I kind of a bit of a palate cleanser after our last few very deep, very heavy themes. Definitely kind of a fun return to slasherdom. Yeah, I look forward to hitting another heavy one. Kubrick is not lighthearted.
No,
But-
but definitely a cool movie.
Oh, so excited. Yeah, can't wait. So yeah, can't wait to do it again.
Alrighty, well, find us on social media at OMNLDpod or email us at omnldpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions, your comments, all of those good things.
Yes, please. And as always, if you know someone who's into this kind of stuff, send us our way.
What? Oh, send
Press
us
the
on
share
there.
button and send it to your friends.
Yeah, just if each of you tell one person who likes this kind of stuff, that would help us out a lot. We'd appreciate it, but we already appreciate that you're here with us. Thank you for listening.
Indeed. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye-bye.
See ya.